All throughout this morning, I have been asking you, how realistic is peace on earth? That is off the back of His Majesty's speech yesterday, where he openly called for peace on earth. That is obviously in reference to some of the conflicts that we are experiencing around the world at this time. And very patiently waiting on the line to discuss this is both Lucy and Abdullah. So we'll go to Abdullah first, because I think he's been waiting a little longer. Abdullah, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Finn. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you are as well. Now, Abdullah, what can you tell me? How realistic is peace on earth?
Peace, if we introspect, that's how peace occurs. We have to introspect and look at our own faults first. You know, that's the key. If we keep on pointing fingers at others all the time, then we never have peace. The thing is that we have to admit our faults. That's the first thing. And I mean, I myself personally, I always back down with any arguments and things. Usually, if obviously, if it's going to be the means of peace in the long run. But as far as the Middle East is concerned, look, we can't have selective amnesia as well, which we tend to have. You know, if for example, if we look at all the since 19th, in fact, from history, if we look that in the Middle East, Christians, Muslims, Jews all used to live together. There was no issues. Right, 1940, when the Balfour Declaration took place, and then of 1948, Palestinians were expelled. If the Palestinians did to Israel now what Israel has been doing to the Palestinians over the years, 1 week and the Western powers would have gone in. Not even 1 week, within a few days.
What in particular are we referring to here, Abdullah, when you say that if the Israelis were treated in the way that they have treated Palestinians for years? What are you referring to?
The very inception of Israel, 1948, for example, was based on mass expulsion, ethnic cleansing. Thousands had lost their lives. There was many rapes, which even the Israeli soldiers have come on air and admitted recently, very elderly soldiers. So all this.
Can't say I've heard of that, but if you say so.
Sorry?
I can't say I've heard any Israeli soldier ever admit to that, but if you say so. The only what we've ever heard of when it comes to anyone having to be subjected to sexual assault is unfortunately the Israeli hostages who were taken on the 7th of October.
I can name a few as well if you want, but I mean, the time is short, but there is soldiers who've come on air and have explicitly explained what they've done to villages and burnt villages, burnt people alive, etc. There's so much graphic details which I don't want to...
No, I don't think it's necessary to go into such graphic detail at this time of the morning, exactly. But we'll have to take your word for it, Abdullah, in the absence of any proof of that. But okay, so when you what I'm curious about is that you first of all, you started off this conversation by saying that the hope of peace is that you have to sort of look introspectively, so you have to look at yourself first.
Of course.
Don't you think that part and parcel of the reason why there probably wouldn't be peace in that region of the world is because there are people who believe, such as yourself, that Israel doesn't necessarily have a right to exist?
No. That's not the case. The case is, look, if the agreement is 1967 borders and the occupation is ended, then there's a chance of peace. But if
what sort of where are we talking about in terms of occupation? Because the only occupied areas that I'm aware of is the West Bank. So I assume you're referring to the West Bank, yes?
That's what I'm saying, the West Bank. I mean, international law. Why is it, I don't understand, why is it that there's international law for some people, but international law doesn't exist for others? That's where the problem is.
Who doesn't it exist for?
Double standards. Sorry?
Who doesn't international law exist for?
I mean, Israel has been given a carte blanche, to do whatever it wants, how it wants, even though Western powers say, oh, don't do this, be careful with this, but then nothing's implemented, nothing is adhered to. But when it comes to other states or other people, there is, oh, look, they're breaking international law. For example, even in Saddam Hussein, within a few breaking of...
Okay, well, all right, so Abdullah, let me put it to you like this. Let's just say hypothetically, which, by the way, is not the case, but let's just say hypothetically that Israel does breach international law, and you may like to know that at every step of military action, Israel actually does seek legal advice on whether or not it's doing the right thing or not. So I doubt very much that it breaches international law, but I don't think I'm an expert on it any more than you are. But let's just say hypothetically that there is a country out there somewhere other than Israel that has breached international law. What would happen as a result of it? It's not like you can throw an entire country in prison. International law is a peace. International law is just simply a mutual understanding of how other countries should treat each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that if it's not adhered to, that there will be any punishment for it.
Then why did we massacre hundreds of thousands of people in Iraq?
Well, why does anyone massacre hundreds of thousands of people? Literally, why does anyone do that?
But this was based on, Iraq was based on...
You know, why did Hamas massacre 1,400 Israelis on the 7th of October? Why does anyone massacre anyone?
And that's what I'm saying. If we have selective amnesia, we forgot 2008 where, for example, 2008, 2014, 2012, 2021, where thousands were killed thousands of Palestinians were killed when the bombing campaigns took place. Why don't we refer to those? Why are we only one
I tell you where the selective amnesia comes into this, Abdullah, is because the problem is you focus on the killing of citizens, but you don't ask why that happened in the first place. All of those dates that you've referred to is because that there were rocket attacks on Israel for every single time of those dates. The main reason that why Israel has sustained so few casualties is because of the Iron Dome system. If you don't know what the Iron Dome is, just to explain to people who might not, Iron Dome is a missile interception system that the Israelis have spent billions of foreign aid on to protect their citizens. And that's the biggest difference between people such as Hamas and the Israelis. Hamas have spent their foreign aid storing up weapons. Hamas have spent billions on weaponry to use against Israel, whereas Israel has used those billions of dollars to protect its citizens. So you talk about selective amnesia. I put it to you, sir, that you might be the one with the selective amnesia.
No, of course. Obviously, we don't want nobody wants the rockets to be fired. But we have to, like you said, have to understand why. Why is it that they've been hedged into
because they don't want Israel to exist. That is why they've openly admitted they don't want Israel to exist. So what is a country supposed to do when you've got to them an enemy who says that it is their sole purpose and their goal in life to wipe them off the map? What are they supposed to do about that?
No, but Phil, they've got to stop their brutality on a daily basis. You know, you have to.
What brutality? What are we talking about? Brutality on a daily basis where? Sorry, if you're referring to what's going on in Gaza at the moment, it is because I would like to think you and I both know that Hamas, unfortunately, store weapons within various buildings that have public people in them. So innocent citizens are getting caught up in war against their will. So if Hamas would release all the Israeli hostages and would stop storing rockets on schools, in hospitals, building tunnels, refugee camps, all of these different parts of the Gaza Strip. No, I want to answer this question because I don't understand why people omit this, right? They don't talk about this. They ignore this bit and it's ridiculous. It's fundamental to the problem.
Phil, with all due respect, look, listen, when you talk about human shields, I don't know if you're married, if you've got a wife or a mother.
No, I'm happily single.
Okay, or whoever, one of your best friends, let's say, was put in, say your best friend was put in front of you and somebody wanted to have a go at you, then they kill your friend as well as you. Is that, it doesn't make sense. If there's a thief or a bank robber in a bank, we blow up the whole building, say we want to get the bank robber, but then blow up the whole building in the meantime. I don't know if you've seen the graphic images of children and mangled bodies, etc.
Yes, I have. But I blame Hamas for that.
You can't blame Hamas.
Of course you can blame Hamas for it, and I tell you why you can blame Hamas for it. If they stop putting these innocent people in harm's way, then it wouldn't be a problem. Of course they do.
That's ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous. Of course they put them in harm's way. Of course they put them in harm's way. Why on earth can you possibly say, when you store rockets in hospitals, in schools, in refugee camps, do you think that's the sign of good leadership? Do you think that's the sign of someone who cares about their citizens?
Do you really believe every single building in Gaza has got weapons stored in their houses, in their buildings, inside?
I believe it's very targeted.
No, that's ridiculous, Phil. They've killed nurses. They've killed over 100 journalists. They've killed babies. Every single person hasn't got a bomb inside their belly that they want to massacre.
No, I don't say they do. No, if it was a massacre, I'm sorry, I disagree completely, because if it was a massacre, then you tell me why is it they're doing so much to warn people about the areas they're going to target. That doesn't sound like a massacre to me.
So then they warn people, go to the south, and they bomb the south. They've killed so many people. Just yesterday, they killed over 100 people in Rafah. Where they
so Hamas says. Do you want to take the word of a terrorist organisation?
Oh, come on, on, every single journalist in Gaza has been stated. Do you think everybody is lying? Everybody in Gaza is lying.
Do you think Do you think every single journalist counts the number of deceased, or do you think they take the word of the Hamas Health Ministry, which are the ones who release the official figures? It's lazy journalism.
Israel has numbers for people, and even Israel has clarified that. So I don't know where you're coming from, Phil, with all due respect.
So, well, it doesn't sound like there's much due respect, to be honest with you, but let's put that to one side. I put it to you as well that this is one of the other reasons when I really learnt not to take the Hamas figures that seriously, is do you remember the time when there was the Hamas rocket attack on one of the main hospitals in Gaza, and they were very quick, the newspapers and the news outlets were very quick to blame Israel, even though Israel didn't claim any responsibility to it, and also not to mention that it later proved that indeed it was a misfired rocket by Hamas that was responsible for that hospital disaster. Do you recall at the time that they had said that a total of around 500 people had died? They'd released those figures within an hour or so. They couldn't have possibly cleared all that rubble and got all the victims of that out in time. So that's when I started taking it with a massive pinch of salt, because I just thought they don't know that. They really, really don't know that, and people believe it.
But Phil, they've bombed hospitals, many other hospitals. They've been phoning those hospital people to get out of the hospital. They've killed nurses, doctors, journalists. You know, they've killed, you name it. They've killed anybody, everybody. And how can you? You know, this is, if you don't say it's genocide, it's ethnic cleansing at the least. They've killed thousands of people.
It is not.
No, come on.
Sorry, was it genocide or ethnic cleansing when we went into Iraq and places like that? You think that it was about ethnicity? It's nothing to do with it. It's to do with trying to clear out a group of individuals who, unfortunately, are a real threat to peace in the whole world. I mean, people think it's just the Middle East, but believe me, it is the whole world at threat here. You don't get an organisation such as Hamas who turn around and say that their sole objective is to wipe Israel off the map and then to go after every single Jew on the planet. And you think these are peace-loving people?
No, Phil, Fatah has spoken. You know, the UK ambassador, the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Hassan Zumlot, he's spoken to Hamas leaders. He himself, in an interview, said, look, we recognise between us that we only want the 1967 borders and a right to return, which Israel denies. Just like anybody in the whole world with a connection to Israel, no connection to Israel, you know, is a Jew, they're allowed to go to Israel, regardless of where they're from, regardless of no generation has been there. But the Palestinians who've lived there for generations, who've been expelled, they have no right to return to their homeland. They can't even go see their own relatives there. You know, that's what I'm saying. But 1967 borders, that's what they've agreed to. That's what they want. But Israel is denying this.
Yeah, well, it's not strictly speaking true, because there are many Palestinians who enjoy freedom of crossing both to and from the country. There are permits for people to work there. There are many people who describe themselves as Israeli Arab, which are those who, of course, maybe have heritage of Palestinian descent, who live, work, and very, very happily coexist in Israel. Basically, the ones who are normally not permitted back into Israel are the ones who have proven links to any sort of trouble, or the ones who don't really want to see Israel exist. So I'm afraid that sort of all of this is just misinformation that carries on getting spread. But look, do you know what, Abdullah? I dare say you and I could talk about this for a very long time. Unfortunately, we are going to run out of time, so I will move on for no other reason than time reasons.